Hello and welcome back to Nate Knows Nothing, the podcast that just got back from the grocery store. That's right, these days the only way I'm getting out of the house is if I'm going to the grocery store. I feel like I gotta find some sort of hobby that doesn't, like, because these days, like, that's just it. It's like just enough humanity for me, you know? Like, if I leave the house for just an hour, it's just enough to remind me that weird people exist, and I'm sure I'm one of them, okay? I mean, how many of these people do I encounter also go home and record a podcast about their experience? So I guess I do qualify as one of those odd people, right? So I'm not pretending like I'm somehow better than the people I encounter in public, but man, it is good to be home. Also because like I went to the store at like 4:30. It is pitch black out. That is nuts to me. It still doesn't compute mentally for me, right? And like, you know, even if we didn't have the whole daylight saving time thing, it'd still be early as hell and pitch black out. It totally messes with me. I'm half asleep in the afternoon. But anyway, I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a good week. And if you're dreading the holidays, just know that we're halfway over. We're almost done with them. In just a couple weeks, it'll be Christmas, and then we'll all go back to our normal whatever lives, you know? I think it's interesting how we all use the holidays as like an excuse to be friendly with one another, and then that seems to go out the window as soon as January 1st hits. You know, we all do the resolutions, we give up on those immediately, but the whole time it's like, you know, why don't we just continue? Like but that's the other thing is if it was Christmas year round, I think everybody would lose their minds. Even kids would be like, oh my God, I'm so tired of this. Can we just do something normal? It is wild to me. Like, okay, so I don't know if this is just part of unlearning everything you learned as a kid, right? Or everything you're told as a kid. But the fact that the only thing us as adults really go along with anymore, at least in, in adulthood, it's like, yeah, we still do the Christmas thing, right? You know, you still do it. And once you're older, you do it for the kids, really, right? You do it to make them happy. But so many adults get so into it. And that's the only time it's okay to have an imagination. As an adult, you're kind of like, okay, they're a little weird, but, you know, it is the holidays. But any other time of the year, if you start telling me about some magical man who drops off presents during the year, yeah, I think you're a psycho. And look, I don't mean to, you know, have a poor attitude about the holidays, because I actually do enjoy it. Sometimes, the older you get, you got to remind yourself, especially like there's no kids in my life, right? I don't have any kids myself. You know, I got a niece, nephew, and all that, but you know, for the most part, it's just us, my dog, my wife, and it's like you kind of got to remind yourself to get into it, right? Because it is fun. It's a good feeling, right? I mean, people who don't, you know, they're all Scrooge-like, and it's easy to slip into that. But sometimes you gotta remind yourself that it's a fun time. It can be fun, you know. And one way to do that is by watching Christmas movies. Probably the thing I look forward to most around the holidays for some reason. I think it just puts you in the spirit, right? And I don't even really watch them. I'll just have them on in the background, which I guess some people probably hate them, which is totally understandable, by the way. But I go all in. I watch them all, man. And I'm a child of the 90s, okay? So I'm watching a lot of what some people would probably call a modern Christmas movie, right? Of course, there's the elves of the world, you know, that Will Ferrell's elf. We got, you know, which one I really like, which has become like probably one of my top favorite Christmas movies because it's so kind of just silly and stupid and fun. It's The Night Before with Seth Rogen, and it's great. It's a funny movie. I like that one a lot. But a classic that I always come back to every year somehow is called, it's The Santa Claus. And I said it like you wouldn't know what it is. I said it's called. But yeah, it's The Santa Claus with Tim Allen. And if you've never seen it, what are you doing with your life, man? Stop everything you're doing other than listening to this podcast and go watch it, okay? It's worth it. It's a classic Christmas movie, you know? It holds up as good as any other classic, in my opinion, okay? Now, if you've never seen it, here's the premise, okay? It's the Santa Claus with an E, okay? And by the way, I love how all these Christmas movies, especially now that we've had every potential title of Christmas movie, from Santa Claus with an E to Violent Night, which came out last year. Which, how did it take that long to use that movie title? Okay, that seems like the most obvious title. It seems like they wrote the name of the movie first, and they were like, I don't know what it's about yet, but we have the title. But the Santa Claus, it's about Tim Allen's character who accidentally kills Santa Claus, right? He spooked him. He scared him off the roof, and he falls, and Santa dies. And then, Tim Allen's character, pressured by his own son, his own child. I don't know how old the kid is, maybe 8 years old or something. But he pressures him into putting on the suit. And the clause is, once you put on the suit, you're Santa. It doesn't matter. You forfeit all other existence, and you are Santa. It doesn't matter, which is absurd. And of course, he's kind of got this he's like a grumpy character, right? He's kind of like a grumpy guy in the beginning. He's just like, he wears a suit. He works nice corporate job. He works at a toy company, of course, and then he kind of needed this to happen to save himself and save Christmas, right? This was the whole thing. And it's your typical Christmas movie. And when I was a kid, this was the most magical thing you've ever seen, right? It was the only movie that made me, I was like, this is real, right? It was like magic. And then now that I'm older, I watch it from the adult's perspective in the story, right? When you're a kid, you're identifying with the kid who's like, Santa's real. And then when you're an adult, you're watching all this stuff like, holy shit, if this ever happens to me, I am not putting on a goddamn suit. Like, we just watched it, and all I could think was, man, this is the only time this happens, and of course it's because you become Santa Claus, right? It's never like, okay, you put on this other article of clothing, you become, Jeff Bezos or something. Don't get me wrong, I'd much rather be Santa than Jeff Bezos, because Santa, I don't know, do we ever really cover in society, do we ever agree on what his salary is? I don't know. But I would say, actually, I would even argue Jeff Bezos is probably the closest thing we have to an actual Santa Claus, or at least Amazon is, right? I mean, it's the closest thing. Sometimes it's like, yeah, in one night, although it takes, millions of people. But I digress. I just think, would it be cool if you could put on any article of clothing and you become you have this awesome career, right? And you become like this, everything's magic. But Santa, I don't know, it seems like a stressful job. The joke itself is like, oh, only works one day a year. And in the movie, he kind of does. At least the first one, because the thing is, the whole premise is he's denying it the whole time. And then, a year goes by and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I am Santa. Like, he gradually gets fatter. His hair's white. He's growing a thick beard all of a sudden. Like, you could have put on any other, like a Tom Brady jersey. Maybe then you get in, like, ripped. You're just in great shape, right? Wouldn't that be nice if that's how it works? Instead, you got to put on the Santa suit, and all of a sudden, you're fat. I'm rambling. I'm sorry. So, as I was saying, I'm watching this movie now, and I'm watching it from the perspective of the adults in the film, and it is so different. It's such a different experience now. Because, of course, the kid, Tim Allen's character is divorced, and his ex-wife, his son's mom in the movie, right? She's dating or married to a psychiatrist who the whole time is like talking about how everyone's crazy, and it's actually very funny, because you're kind of like, wow, yeah, this kid's like crazy, right? The whole time, like, imagine being married to this woman or dating this woman whose ex-husband is dressing as Santa Claus, seemingly to impress his kid. Wouldn't you be like, this guy is an absolute psychopath? And then there's the other side of me that's watching this like, oh, geez, was it the worst thing any guy's ever done to impress his kid? Just pretend you're Santa Claus. But this whole movie, right? And this whole movie, not one person, okay? Remember, he killed the last Santa Claus by accidentally scaring him, and he fell off the roof. And the whole next, scene is him and his kid going from house to house delivering the presents, and then they get dropped off at the North Pole, and nobody cares that this former Santa is dead, right? They're just like, all right, you're the new Santa now. And I'm like, damn, doesn't anyone give a shit about the last guy, That'd be like if your boss just didn't show up to work one day and some guy showed up with the same suit on and was like, all right, everybody get to work, But not one elf questioned it. Not one. And now, look, I don't mean to pick apart this movie because it's about a fake character, right? This is obviously a fantasy land, and I'm over here looking at it like it's some realistic, like this. It's kind of like watching Star Wars and being like, I don't think that's a real Yoda. I don't think that's a real thing. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of gotta suspend disbelief, But I always find myself doing this with Christmas movies because I think it's hilarious. Home Alone's another one where I'm like, this whole time, I'm like, all I can think about is how awful this family is. Yet somehow it's funny and I'm okay with it. Like the whole time you're like, no, you have to leave them home alone because this is hilarious. You just have to let it happen. Because it's easy to watch these movies now and be like, oh, you know what? If this movie was made today, it wouldn't be able to work because, the McAllisters would have a whole security system. They'd have a Ring camera. They'd be checking it from the plane, And sometimes you just gotta let it happen. Sometimes you just gotta watch these movies. It'll get you in the spirit, because it is a fun time of year. We just moved to this new place this summer, and the whole time we're like, what? How are we gonna decorate it for Christmas or whatever? We haven't done anything. Place is bare, right? I haven't had no desire to decorate. Although we talked about it the last 2 nights. Haven't done a thing. We're like, we should go get the Christmas tree. And now it's December. We got 20 days till Christmas. So, yeah, I'm probably just not going to do it. The amount of effort I'm going to have to put in here, and let's be honest, I'm not going to do anything. She's going to do it all. She just has a better eye for that stuff than I do. But it reminds me, I was back home for Thanksgiving, and my mom, we decorated the Christmas tree while we were there. And the best part is, the tree is just up year round, not in the living room. In the off season, we move it downstairs. Okay, so instead of and it's just like one of your standard fake tree. It's like you got 3. There's like a top section, middle section, and bottom section. You could just take it apart, but instead we carry it downstairs at the end of every Christmas, and we just put it in the corner of the basement. And at that point, we should just leave it up year round, right? It's kind of like a crazy lamp. I feel like this is going to be me eventually. I'm like, this isn't a bad idea. And in fact, I say we just leave it decorated. That'd be even cooler, right? Like, just like put this in the closet for, 10 months out of the year. Honestly, it's probably the dumbest, smartest idea I've ever had, I think. Speaking of dumb stuff, I did the dumbest thing I've ever done. And I should say the most embarrassing thing. I don't know if you've ever call in if you've done something to make yourself look like an idiot, because I'm actually, have you ever been embarrassed alone? You know what I mean? Like, you almost don't want to tell anybody that you did this because you're so stupid, that they'll judge you based on how horrible of a decision you've made. And it's not even a bad decision as much as I'm just an idiot. Okay, so here's what happened. A couple years ago, I bought a really nice camera to film my comedy sets, right? I'm like, I want to record them. So I bought like this nice camera, and I'm using it for a couple years, and it's going great. It's working great. This thing is just what I needed. Well, one day it stops working, and I don't know. I get frustrated, so I kind of just like put it away. I'm like, whatever, I'll deal with it later. And then in the meantime, I was just recording stuff on my phone. And then the whole time I'm like, I could just use my phone. These things, it's an iPhone. These things work great. What do I even have this other camera for? So I kind of forgot about it. And then I wanted to use it for something else. And so I was like, I got to figure out how to fix this camera. And then I'm convinced it's fried because I left it in a hot car. And I mean hot. Like, it was like peak of summer, middle of July, 200 degrees out. And that's about the time it stopped working. So I was like, shoot, I think I've like melted the inside of this camera somehow. Because, you start Googling things the way you would Google it if you had like symptoms of, it's like going to WebMD for my camera. They were like, yeah, man, it's fried. If you left it in your hot car, it's definitely not going to work. You probably melted the sensor on it or whatever the hell, because I'm not a camera guy. Okay. So I'm bummed because I spent a lot of money on this camera. I'm like, I feel like such an idiot, and I feel like I wasted this money, so I felt stupid. And I finally reach out to Panasonic, who is the company that makes the camera, and they were like, you should send it in. We'll fix it for you. So I send it in, and Something else you should know about me too is if I'm dreading it, it's gonna take me for like I'm the worst communicator. Like I send it in, and you're just kind of mailing it to this warehouse in the middle of Florida. That's where I was supposed to mail it. There's no confirmation it arrived. There's no nothing. So a week or so goes by, and then I finally like reach out via email, and I just say, "Hey, I sent this thing in. Did you ever get it?" And he goes, "No." So we finally find it. And mind you, we go back and forth for weeks about this before he even finds it. And mainly because I'm so slow at communicating. It has nothing to do with them. It was just me the whole time forgetting to respond or not having any interest in taking care of this because I knew it was going to cost me money. And he goes, well, it'll be $50 for us to even look at it. There's just like a fee for them diagnosing the problem. So he goes, what's wrong with it? And I said, I left it in a hot car. I think I fried it. And a week goes by, nothing. Another week goes by, nothing. And he goes, you still have to pay us. So I paid him $50. And after shipping, too, by the way, I paid to ship this thing down there. And the guy goes, camera works great. The battery was just dead. Now, the only good thing about this is I wasn't in front of him when he told me this, you know? I mean, I'm just a moron. You have to understand, from this random person that works at Panasonic in the repairs department is like, yeah, I'm going on lunch. Okay, this one's easy. There's no way this guy is not just roasting the hell out of me. And this is the other thing. My brain goes down this, it just spirals, right? Like, I'm just like, man, I know he has my email. He's looking me up. He's probably like, let me see if this person's like 90 years old or not. And sure enough, it's just me, a millennial looking guy who should know how to check a battery before he ships something off to be repaired just to pay $50 for someone to go, it just needs to be charged. It's so bad that I couldn't even like face responding. You know, I just said, how do I get it? He goes, someone's going to be in contact with you about shipping it back. And then I got a phone call and I didn't answer it. I couldn't even bring myself to face these people. This was hands down the dumbest thing I've done in quite some time. So if you're having a rough day, just remember that. Remember that you could be as dumb as me. Something exciting I wanted to share with the listening audience is I'll be back at the Traverse City Comedy Festival in early next year. It'll be in Traverse City all weekend. Was it the first week of February or something? You know, go to my social media or check out Traverse City Comedy Festival website, all that good stuff for lineups and things like that. There's going to be a lot of great comedians there, a lot of cool big headliner shows too, like comedians like Joe List or Rory Scovel and all sorts of funny people. It's going to be so much fun. Last year's was probably a top 10 weekend of my entire comedy career. It was so much fun. So I'm looking forward to going back. Make sure you check them out online and get your tickets, and we'll see you up there. All right, last thing I want to talk about before I wrap up the show is Spotify Wrapped. Did you guys participate? It's the only streaming service I use, and I know I shouldn't because it's like the worst one. It's the one that pays the art. My album isn't even on it because the distribution service that I have is, there's some, I don't know, they don't pay the artists enough. There's this whole thing. Anyway, it doesn't matter, but I know it's like the worst streaming service in terms of, artist, you know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, point is, I still use it. It's the only one I use, mainly because I am on someone's family plan, and it's ad free, and it doesn't cost me a dime. That's the point. Somebody added me to their family plan, and I'm like, well, I'm going to use this ad free service until I got it, right? It's kind of like the whole Netflix thing, you know, we're all sharing a Netflix password, right? Like, it's the same thing, only I'm doing it for Spotify. That being said, I refuse to look at it. I'm not participating in Spotify Wrapped. I do think it's interesting how they just package the data and they regurgitate it to you with some cool designs, and then it's like, yeah, I mean, you can see who your top artist is. Like, you can see that. You can go search it. It's not, I mean, it's kind of brilliant in a way. because everybody starts talking about Spotify. Everyone's sharing screenshots of their stuff, right? Everything's cool. But it's like, hey, you can see that data year round. And also, I'm glad this is the only service that offers this, because I don't want Uber Eats showing me how many times I ordered out this year, okay? I don't need to know. No one needs to know how many times I ordered wings at 2 a.m., okay? I don't need this data regurgitated to me, okay? If anything, Uber Eats should do the opposite. They should just erase all data from any purchase that I've made all year, right? So the minute they start doing that, I'm in trouble. But that's it for me, everybody. Thanks so much for listening this week. If you enjoyed the show, please hit subscribe, leave a nice review, a nice rating. That would be super helpful. Tell your friends about it. Send a link to your friends. Also, let this whole thing play out until it ends. You never know. This could be like a Marvel movie. There could be some cool after credits sequence, even though there never will be. I promise. All right. We'll talk to you next week.